Creating eyelids with bones is very tricky. It all depends on how you've modeled your eyelids. In the case of this character, the eyelids are half closed, which makes our job a little easier. Switch to a left view. And for the first time in a couple of tutorials, we need to see the eyeballs. So we'll just make one of them visible as a wireframe. We need to use the wireframe pivot as a reference point. Go into the setup mode. We'll just pick any bone. We'll add another bone to that. Let's drag this down to the bottom to the face controls. We'll parent that to the face controls. And while we're at it, let's go back up to the top and we'll change bodybuilder mesh to wireframe so we can see a good pivot point for this eyeball. Head back to the bottom of the list. Select this bone and let's position this bone over where the eye is. Switch to the back view. We'll make sure it's right in the middle. Let's go to a left and we'll pitch this one up. This bone is the first bone of an eyelid. We need to establish a pivot point which goes right around the eye so the eye arcs properly. We're going to set the slip on this bone to 1. It's not going to influence the mesh at all. Its children are. We're going to add extra bones to this. So we'll call this bone upper eyelid R. Let's go to a perspective view. Let's change everything back to shaded wireframe. And if we need to see what the influence is on this bone, we can change the bodybuilder mesh to weight shaded. Let's go into animate. Back into setup, you can see what the weight influence should be. Since we set the slip on this one, there is no weight influence. So while we're in setup, let's add another bone to that one. This bone will be part of the influence cycle. We can toggle the setup and take a look at what influences this one bone has. It's actually quite a lot. Now, let's go back down to our upper eyelid R. Use the multiply key to duplicate this chain. This will be the lower side. Let's just pitch that down right now. And we'll call this one lower eyelid R with bone 2. Now because we multiplied it, we maintain our slip settings for the lower eyelid. So I'm going to go back into animate and into setup. Let's see, let's do that one more time. You can see that the influence has changed from this bone to the top bone, because now both of them are fighting over control points right in the middle. All the mesh above this bone is getting the influence. All the mesh below this bone is getting its influence. So just by adding the second bone, we've altered the way that the mesh is deformed. Click into animate and see what it looks like as a default here. Let's go up to the top and change the bodybuilder back out of weight shaded, just plain old flat shaded. Let's pitch that down and up. You can see what's going on there. Same thing with the lower half. You can pitch that up. And let's not worry about the nose area or anything, but let's just use bank and pitch, see if we can't get the boundary line of these lids to close flat. I think we can. If you need to see what it looks like here, forget about the distorting mesh. Let's tab that into MetaNURBS mode and take a look at it. No, that doesn't look too bad at all. Let's reset the keyframes for all of those. And let's go to the next step. We're going to call this one upper eyelid sup R. And the lower eyelid we're going to name lower eyelid sup R. We'll start with the upper eyelid and use the divide key on the keypad to mirror that across. We'll zoom out a little. The same thing for the lower eyelid. Divide key to mirror that across. We'll just manually change these R_1s back to L. And our eyeballs are pretty much set up. There's one smaller control that we should add now that we've set these in. We should probably add a little nostril flare moving for like a sneer. let's go back to the front here. We'll just pick like Nate underscore cheek R and use the multiply key to make another cheek. Let's go into setup. We'll call this one nostril R. And just move this over next to the nostril. Let's make it a little smaller. Remember, it doesn't have to be on the boundary. It can be sitting outside of the mesh. Let's move around that. We can even move it in on local X, on heading. We go into animate. Let's test that out. We can move the nostril up and down. Go back into setup. We'll move this deeper in towards the mesh so it has more influence on these control points. Let's keep doing some more tweaking here. Move it in on X, Z. Move it up and down. You can see on our eyelid that it's gaining a lot of control over that. Won't worry about it just yet. We have a secret weapon to fix all that. So nostril right, we use the divide key to mirror that across. We'll call this one nostril L. So now we have as much control as we dare on this mesh for making any of the facial expressions. So let's go back in and refine it. Let's take things one step at a time. We're going to save this scene as setup K.